Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. Today, we are going to be talking about surviving the emotional storms that happen when you have traumatic events that occur during your PMDD. And this specifically happened for me this month. I feel like I'm still in a place of shock because I got robbed. And I'm going to go into the whole story of how this happened. But I just want to let you know when it did happen, I was deep in PMDD. I was on day 12 of PMDD. So, the further you get towards your cycle, the more your symptoms increase. So that's where I was. I was in a place where all of my symptoms were increasing and I was feeling worse and worse. And I was just going on autopilot and trying to get things done. And I feel like when you've done the work in your PMDD journey, specifically with your relationships, and you're trying to make sure that you're very aware of what your partner needs, what you need. There's so many things going on that you feel like everything has to be done a certain way. There's a lot of pressure because if you don't do certain things, your PMDD relationship is not going to be right. And then all of a sudden you're going to start to argue, and then it's going to make your symptoms worse. And then you're going to get into those PMDD monthly breakups. So that's where I was. I was like, let me make sure that, my partner was getting really clingy and needy. So we already went through the series on the anxious attachment style, and that's exactly where he was. And it was triggering me because I was in the avoidant attachment style where I just wanted space. But even though I wanted space, I was making sure I did the things that I tell my private clients to do. You pretty much have 3 non-negotiables a day, and you just commit to doing those things. You don't have to overdo it. They don't have to be super big things, but I was doing that. So I felt like I was really on top of things. So I don't know if you've ever been that place of feeling like you're doing really, really good of managing your PMDD, and then something happens and it makes you spiral. So that's what happened for me. I was going out to run errands with my daughter, and I said she really likes to get fresh fruit. So I'm going to take her to this, grocery store. I'm not going to name the name because now that I've dealt with the police department, they've now notified individuals that there is this, crime going on in this particular grocery store in multiple counties. But I will tell you the crime that was committed, or what I'm a victim of, and that is grand theft, fraud. So grand is exactly what you're thinking right now. It's pretty huge. So the night before all of this happened, I had only got about 3 to 4 hours of sleep because I had insomnia. And I figured, okay, I have insomnia. I'm going to use this to my advantage. I'm going to get a lot of my, schoolwork done. I'm finishing up on my dissertation. So I took that opportunity to do a lot of schoolwork. And I literally only got 3 hours of sleep, but I was like, I have to get these errands done because it was Sunday. I had to go to work on Monday. And I was just like, I don't want to carry this on during the week. So I went to take my daughter to the specific grocery store that has the things that she particularly likes. Um, I went to the grocery store. I'm in that mode. My daughter is 13 years old. So she's in that mode of me giving her more responsibility. My mantra is as a parent is I don't want to wait until you're 18, give you all this responsibility, and then you're like completely shocked and overwhelmed. So as soon as you go into puberty or you go into teenage land, I'm starting to give you more and more responsibility. So she knows her responsibility is to push the cart in the grocery store. She also knows her responsibility is to put the groceries in the cart and when we get back, all of these things. So she was doing that. She was pushing the grocery cart. Then we eat a lot of fresh food, which goes by really quickly because you can't keep fresh food in your house that long without it going bad. So that's why we go to the grocery store every single week so we get more fresh food. So she was pushing the cart. I had a purse, which had my wallet in it. Like I had a big purse, and then I had a wallet that goes around your wrist, like a wristlet, that had all my credit cards in it. I put that inside my purse. And yeah, so we went to the middle part of the aisle where you would get the fresh food. And I always get lemons for the week. I love lemon water. I drink it every morning. So I get about 10 lemons for the week, 10 limes, because sometimes I do lemon and limes. And my daughter gets about 10 mangoes. Her thing is mangoes. She loves it. So we get those little plastic bags where, you rip off the plastic bag and then you go to pick up the fruit or the vegetable and then you put it in the cart. So I place my purse in the top of the cart where you would normally keep the eggs, like that little small portion. That's where I put my purse. And then I got the little bag and I went over to get my lemons and you kind of check them a little bit. And my daughter went over to get her mango. She definitely checks them a little bit because she likes the firm mangoes, not the mushy ones. I prefer the mushy ones, but she only likes the ones that are firm. So we're over here filling up our fruit essentially. And then once we're done, we kind of bring our little bags back to the cart, put our fruit in the cart, and continue to walk around the grocery store. We get all of these things and we spend, so now that I have the police report, I can kind of tell you how long we spent in the grocery store. We got there at 1:15. By the time we were checking out, it was 1:45. So essentially about 30 minutes. And we got like everything from meat, veggies, fruit, all the things. Then I went to we got to the checkout line to pay for our groceries. And I went to check out and I reached in my purse and there was no wallet there. And I was freaking out. I'm like, Veronica, where's my wallet? That's my daughter's name. And she was like, oh, maybe it dropped in the car. So this has happened before where my purse is tipped over, my purse, then my wallet that's inside of my purse is like fell on the crack. So while I'm checking in the car, putting my seat back, all the things for my wallet, I get a notification on my phone because I have notifications set up every single transaction that's made from my bank account, my credit card, all the things. I get a notification on my phone. I started getting all of these different notifications of charges that were getting approved for all of my cards. I mean, I'm talking Amex cards, checking savings from different banks. Um, all of them were, getting approved, but they were in different locations. So that's when I realized, oh my goodness, somebody stole my wallet. And I go back into the grocery store. By this time, the clerk has bagged all of our groceries. My daughter's just waiting there, like, Mom, where's your card so you can pay for these groceries? And I'm like, hey, we have to go. Like, we have to deal with something. And the lady at the cash register was like, what happened? And I'm like, somebody stole my wallet. My purse, I had a good sized purse, was you could just reach inside of it. So what they did was while we were getting our fruit, they reached inside of my purse, grabbed my wallet, and took it out. And I went in the car and I sat there trying to cancel all of my credit cards. But because I had so many different credit cards and so many different accounts, as I was canceling everything, I was still getting notifications that they were swiping my card. These charges are getting approved. They're getting gas one place, they're getting food one place, they're ordering things online. So these are people that are obviously very experienced in what they were doing. And it was not just one person, because when the police surveillance, tracked all of the transactions, they were coming from different places in the town that we were in. So they basically probably took my wallet, split up the cards, and decided to spend it on different things. And I was so frantic. Me and my PMDD partner have a joint bank account, which has a very high limit. And so the first thing I did was call him and let him know, hey, I need you to cancel this credit card. But I can't, I have to start working on my other accounts. And he was like, okay. So he did that, and he was like, oh my God. So he was messaging me saying, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Like, how did they get, like, he was wanting to know the story of like how they stole your wallet, like how did they get to your wallet? And I was in the mode of kind of fixing things. So being that I was in PMDD, I was already kind of irritated that he was trying to find some person to make the blame of this, right? In my mind, that's what it was. Because why do you need to know, you know, how they stole the things? Like I was in PMDD, so I really wasn't in a place of like being in that understanding mode. Like, hey, I'm panicked because this has happened. My PMDD partner is probably also panicked. Like that level of remorse was not there, because I was just in that kind of mentality of I was so annoyed. I couldn't believe this happened to me. I was already struggling, and I completely fell into that kind of victim mentality, because I'm like, I'm the one that was just trying to do a chore for my daughter. I have all this stuff on my plate. And then here it goes. Here it goes. I started to fall into the rabbit hole of the intrusive thoughts that were telling me, if your PMDD partner was here, if you weren't long distance, none of this would have happened. So now the intrusive thoughts were now telling me that I should be mad at my PMDD partner because the reason that I got robbed is somehow his responsibility. The intrusive thoughts were telling me that if he was here with me, the cart wouldn't have been by itself. We would have never left our wallet there. Now, my partner is very vigilant. Yeah, he's very vigilant. He's very self-aware of his surroundings. So I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have gotten robbed. Like if he would have saw somebody even come close to our basket, he would have said something. My daughter and I are very similar. We're very like, in the moment. We're kind of like living it up. Like we're not like looking for individuals to do us wrong. And that's, to our not our benefit. Because the first thing that my daughter said was, why would someone do this to us? We didn't do anything to them. I think I even had a shirt on that was like good vibes only. Like she was like, you have this shirt on that's really positive. Like, why would they choose to rob you? She couldn't wrap herself around the lack of humanity that people can have, because even though she's 13, we do virtual school. I keep her very close to me. I'm very aware of like what she's exposed to. So she just was in that mindset of her innocence is still there. Yes, there's bad people in the world, but when you bring it to a situation where it's closer to home, then it's a different story, because she's like, we didn't even do anything wrong to these people. Why would they choose to rob us? So basically, if you're thinking about it right now, everything that my daughter put in the cart that she needed for the week, we were now not able to get, because not only like this particular wallet had my driver's license in it. It had my daughter's ID. It had 8 different credit cards. Well, I would say 6 credit cards, 2 debit cards, one for my daughter, one for me. And I literally got nothing. Like, I had nothing. So I was completely distraught. And I was telling my PMDD partner about it, and he kind of went from that mode of like, I'm really sorry that this happened to you, but like, you really need to make sure that you're more vigilant, blah, blah, all of these things. And I was like in a state of shock. Like, but I was also very cognizant of, you know, this happened to me. This has nothing to do with him. Why am I so mad at him? Like, I could feel myself getting really irritable towards him. And I was irritable because I'm like, how are you going to give me advice? Then you start to think about the roles. Like, you're my partner. You're supposed to be helping, taking care of us. Like, none of this would have happened if you were here, all of these things. And I literally took a situation that was stressful for me and I started to pin it on my PMDD partner, but this was all internal. I didn't outwardly say anything to him, to show him that I was feeling that way. And this is why I say a lot of times we can experience and process intrusive thoughts without actually communicating them to our PMDD partner. So a lot of the work that I was doing during this time, it was very much internal, meaning when the lies came up, I was addressing them, I was questioning them, I was doing anything that I could do to not act on them because I wasn't sure if that was the right reaction. And so many times as PMDD sufferers, we're suffering with PMDD, our immediate reaction is to react, and we do, and then we feel guilty and bad about it afterwards. But, as you work with me, you're a private client, you know that that's not the method that we use. We question, we pause, we do all of those things so that we don't immediately feed into the negative commentary that's going to come in our brain from the intrusive thoughts. So I was sitting there going through that process, you know, making a list of all the things that I had in my wallet. So making sure I didn't forget to call a specific company to turn the credit card off or to order replacements for my license. And then I was just totally exhausted and I decided to go to sleep. I went to sleep relatively early that day because I was very burnt out. Whatever I did that day, meaning sitting outside of the police department's office, going into the interrogation room, none of this was planned. So it was kind of very exhausting to just even wrap my head around. So I went to sleep, I would say probably about 9 o'clock. By 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I had a legit panic attack. My heart was beating really fast. I was sweating. I started to feel like I was hearing things around the room. Even my dog, he woke up because he sleeps at the foot of the bed and I think he could feel my energy. So because I was up lurking, he was up lurking. And I just immediately felt this weight on me of, wow, these people really have your address. They have your ID. They can come into your place. They have access to where you live. They could come into your house. They could, so I started to check on my daughter, like all of these things that I was doing. And then I noticed as I was doing those things, the intrusive thoughts came up again. You wouldn't have to be checking on your daughter, if your partner was home. Like all of these things were going on. And I was beginning to feel defeated because everything that was coming up was really true. And so I noticed that I started to think about when I was in the grocery store, what happened, what I could have done differently. And that's when I realized I have PTSD from that incident. That's why I can't sleep right now. And I want to let you know PTSD does not only affect soldiers, it can affect PMDD partners too. So I know that a lot of individuals associate post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, with combat soldiers. But there are many individuals that suffer with PMDD and PTSD that were never in the military. So any traumatic event can result in PTSD. And when you're in PMDD, everything's exasperated. So it is the ability to deal with trauma and stress. It's different for every single person. Some people can experience an event like getting robbed, like I did, and think nothing of it and never think about it again. Other individuals, like me, are a little bit more fragile in a sense where they're starting to question everything. So, my core belief is that I can be a free spirit. I can go out and I can run an errand and I don't have to worry about my purse and blah, blah, blah. The reason why it developed into PTSD because my world that I thought was so safe was now not safe after that moment, meaning I was still in that fight or flight mode because I was like, I'm just going to the grocery store. Like, I'm not going to the club. I'm not going to do anything, immoral. So if I can't go to the grocery store and get my daughter fruit, then I now have a traumatic response because I feel like this moment took that from me. That moment that, you know, everything happened, like it took something out of me. And so I want you to know that PTSD with PMDD is more common than you realize. So these are some PTSD symptoms that you may have seen in your life to where you're now understanding, wait a minute, I do have something going on. Maybe I do have PTSD and PMDD. The first one is flashbacks or other forms of reliving the events. So this can include bad dreams, intrusive thought, or being triggered by anything that reminds the PMDD sufferer of the traumatic events. So this was definitely me because when I started to think back on everything that happened, I started to feel the emotions as if the event was presently happening. When I started to think about where I was in the grocery store and what I was doing and what I was grabbing, I immediately, when I was dreaming about it, I felt that sense of anxiety because I realized this person could have been watching me. Like just in knowing that I was not just grocery shopping alone with my daughter, there is someone else that is presently looking at us and is targeting us. And that did not make me feel easy at all. And I started to lock everything because I felt like if they finessed their way and somehow made their way on post, they could do anything to us. And my worst fear is someone coming into the home and abusing, either me or my daughter. Like that's one of my core fears. And so when you're having that PTSD, response, the event is going to happen again and again and again. And that's what kept happening to me. I was experiencing the same moment, but it was like it was on repeat. And that's a sign that you have PTSD and PMDD. The next sign is hypervigilant. This is when you're very alert to things that are going on. You're really like, we got to make sure we do this and we got to make sure that we do that. And this over alertness in anticipation of possible, danger, it's like you're causing the other person to get anxious because you're so overly anxious. You're thinking that you need to protect them, protect yourself. But in doing so, it's very exhausting and it's limiting because the other person's not fully receiving what you're saying because they're feeling overwhelmed by the influx of information. So I would say to pace yourself when you get to that point, because if you come to an epiphany and you say, I remember where I was in May of last year when I was, trying to get my passport and I was trying to go on deployment, it's not to shame the other person, but it's just to let them know that like, hey, I've been there. And sometimes that peace of mind is the very thing that keeps them going. And so the next PMDD trauma transformational tool that identifies whether you are in that space of PTSD is the sleep. So if you notice that you have insomnia where you're not able to sleep, or you have hypersomnia, which I get sometimes, whereas I sleep for like 13, 14, 15, 16 hours. Like it's the opposite of insomnia. Insomnia is like where you can't fall asleep. Hypersomnia is when you like basically can't be awake. You just keep going to sleep, waking up a little bit, and then going back to sleep. That's how I felt when I get into PMDD. I just want sleep, 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 sleep. Do I get a lot of it? Absolutely not, but that's what I want. And so being that I was sleep deprived and I'd only got 3 hours of sleep the day before, and insomnia is a common symptom that's associated with PTSD, it's night sweats, right? So I get those too. Right. And now I'm figuring out that my PMDD night sweats are in conjunction with PTSD night sweats. So if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, you can have night sweats as well. So if your partner is the one that has, PTSD from everything that's gone on, different scenario, they don't have to be robbed like me. But if they have PTSD, lack of sleep, and then also their body temperature getting warm where they're getting the night sweats, that's a sign of PTSD. So I would strongly suggest that you reach out to get your partner some kind of help in identifying what that means, what's that's going on in their life, just giving them the opportunity to start fresh. And the big part of that is the PTSD and the insomnia. So the next thing is the irritability and aggressive behavior. So individuals with PTSD are very easily agitated, and they tend to overreact with their response. Like you'll be saying one thing and they'll be thinking another thing, but it's so extreme. But when they have PTSD, that's just what they do. And the next thing is the intrusive thoughts. So this may take the form of believing that the one that doesn't have PMDD is bad. All individuals are bad. Then you're faced with these feelings of guilt, shame, and anger, and then thinking that they're common. But like this is your circle. This is who you have in your circle, and the symptoms that are associated with PTSD, they can really range from annoying because you have to do so many tedious things to actually life altering. So you can't work if you have PTSD that's very severe, you're unable to work and you pose a threat to yourself. So suicide is really extreme in these cases, and you're just really in this horrible place. And so I want you to understand that PTSD comes from somewhere. So something from your childhood, it could be sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, things that happened to you that you didn't feel safe, or maybe you had a stressful experience, or maybe you have PMDD, right? And they having PMDD allows you to anticipate the suffering. Meaning for me, I know it's without a doubt I'm going to suffer this many days a week versus you genuinely getting surprised. Like, oh, I didn't know they were going to do that. I didn't know they were going to do that. It's like, wait a minute. You know that the change of command is this state, or not change of command, but you know that you have certain things that you have to do within your relationship. You know there's certain things you have to do in your day-to-day life, and you also know that if you fail to do those things, you deal with the consequences of feeling guilty. You go through that stressful experience, and it really causes you to feel out of whack. So you kind of get to that point of where you're kind of like having to force yourself to be in those moments of being completely alert of what is going on. And sometimes you may feel like because of this traumatic experience that happened while you were in PMDD, that PMDD and PTSD can almost seem like it's too overwhelming. But I want you to know that PTSD in individuals is a common challenge. And even those that have not served in the military, you have PMDD, and that is a battle that you fight every single month. And I don't want you to think that when you think of the term PTSD, that it's meant for this specific group of people. PMDD, and I've said this before and I will say it again, PTSD does not create PMDD, but PMDD definitely does cause you to have more moments of PTSD. So what that means is when you have a traumatic experience, it doesn't cause you to have PMDD now that you've had this traumatic experience. If so, a lot more people would have PMDD. What PMDD does do when you do lean into it and you're going through the process, it does cause you to have PTSD because you're going through these motions of going through these arguments, going through this, and it's not something that I'm saying that you should brush over because we're actively working on it in our PMDD partners private sessions. So you can get a little PTSD because you're working through an issue that you've experienced before, and then now you're experiencing it again. And then also you're experiencing it on top of all of the other issues that you present day have. So what this is telling you is the sooner the better to join the PMDD Partners Breakup Proof Academy, to also book a private session, to get the PMDD Partners Breakup Proof Journal. There's so many tools that I'm giving you, but there's literally no time but the present to actually use them. Because even if I tell you the best things on these calls and say, hey, you need to do this, if you're not in a position where you're willing to do something different so that your relationship with your PMDD partner can look different, then it's going to be very frustrating because you're going to be feeling like I'm just sitting here. It seems like everybody's moving along. Go join the PMDD Partners Breakup Proof Academy. Go join now. The link is in my bio so that you can have that one-on-one support, so that you can understand that you can have moments of PTSD and PMDD, and this is just a way to navigate it. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you, but it does mean that it's possible. And that's my main point of all of this. It is possible to have PTSD while experiencing PMDD symptoms. And there's ways around it. Listen to this episode again and again. We got this. I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD rage and all of these things so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship. So you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.